The Decathlon Riverside GCR is a good gravel bike with quality parts, but it either needs an identity or a better price. Now, Decathlon, for those of you not familiar, is a French sporting goods store. Think REI meets Dick's Sporting Goods for those of you in North America. When I think about Decathlon, I think about the place I bought some CO2 cartridges and an inner tube before doing the Paris-Roubaix sportif at one of the stores in Lille a few years ago. Not a high-end bike shop, but a general sporting goods store. Decathlon had a San Francisco store for a hot minute a couple years ago, but they shut it down. Now you can buy Decathlon bikes through Amazon or through Walmart. And as you might suspect, hearing about a bike that can be bought through Walmart, most of Decathlon's bikes are sold to the tune of a few $100 up to maybe a little over $1,000. This Riverside GCR is $6,000, $6,000. A notable departure for Decathlon. It's carbon frame, carbon Reynolds wheels, Hutchinson Touareg tires, and SRAM Force Grupo with an aluminum cockpit. The geometry is straightforward competitive gravel. The aluminum bar stem seat posts are standard, easy to swap out, easy to adjust. The frame looks good and the bike is quick and comfortable to ride, aside from a couple minor quibbles like the chainring size compatibility and a blinky shifter that I had. I've got no beef with the bike. My question though is, who's gonna buy a Decathlon bike for $6,000? For less than that price, you can get a Canyon Grizzle with a similar spec. You can get a Fazari Schaefer. Both of those are, consumer direct bikes. Comparable spec, lower price as you'd expect for a consumer direct thing. Or for $6,000, you can get a bike shop bike. For instance, Trek Checkpoint SL7 with SRAM Force, carbon wheels, internal storage, ISO speed for a bit of comfort in the back. Guess how much that costs? You got it, $6,000. I'm kind of stumped about this bike, honestly. In this video, I'll tell you more about how it rides, what I think of the parts, what I like, explain some of my chainring issues, and more about the blinky shifter, and give you my take for what I think Decathlon should do with this particular model. There's two models, SRAM Force for $6,000 and then SRAM Rival for a bit less. First saw this bike back in the spring at Sea Outer in California. Thought, cool, French brand, good quality, low price, generic product, but good value. Dig it. The price was not listed at this time. For the record, I'm not against generic product. I sit here before you today, my friends, in generic Costco clothing. I saw a comedian on Instagram talking about, when you find yourself wearing clothing from Costco, that's when you've given up. I don't know if I've given up, but I am certainly one of many folks who appreciate a good deal. So a Decathlon bike, traditionally, while not the Gucciest brand by any means, is often a good deal. Riverside GCR, however, is a notable divergence from that good quality, low price equation. Normally, Decathlon bikes are in like the $300 to $900 range, not a $6,000 product. Of course, the product itself is noticeably different from, an aluminum frame, aluminum fork bike with microshift 10-speed, which is what those Decathlon bikes typically go for. Here you're looking at Reynolds carbon ATR wheels, Hutchinson Touareg tires, full SRAM Force drivetrain, and then, aluminum bar stem seat post. The frame is UCI certified. I don't know of anyone racing this now. You certainly don't need a UCI certification to race gravel, even with the highest levels like UCI Worlds is going on this weekend. But it's not a bad thing to have UCI certification. All that means is that a third party has looked at your design for safety. So nothing wrong there. It just says racy, which again, big departure for Decathlon. I think the frame looks good. Clean lines, internal routing where you want it, such as, through the down tube, but not where you don't. Like up front where it's easy enough to take off the bar and stem, swapped out a longer stem, just like you used to do back in the good old days, just to get your fit dialed. Easy to work on construction. I like the fact that the wheel axles have levers on both sides, not this feltless looking thing, but just a easy to live with, easy to work on situation. The frame is acclaimed 1,058 grams in a medium and that builds up to a claimed 5.8 kilograms or 18.75 pounds complete. This is a large. You can see here what this weighs as is. Bike comes in 4 sizes: small, medium, large, extra large. Most bike shop brands or Canyons, which are consumer direct, obviously, come in usually at least 6 sizes, if not 7 sizes. The parts are solid. Again, I've got zero issue with the spec, and that's what you see on many high quality bikes, whether it's a Canyon consumer direct or a traditional bike shop bike. 1044 cassette with a 40-tooth ring. I tried to put on a 44 and I dug into the frame. Sorry about that. Decathlon. So you can get a 42, but that's about as big as it will go here. Probably not necessarily an issue for everyone, but if you are looking to expand the gear, just something to keep in mind there. Okay, let's talk about the Geo and then how the thing rides. The geometry is racy gravel. It's got a 72-degree head tube, which is on the steeper side of things. I was able to very easily, again, get my ideal geometry with just a few turns of a 4 and 5 mil Allen wrench. The reach is in line with standard gravel. Certainly not the progressive gravel geometry that we're seeing now with a really long top tube and a very short stem. So the large came with a 100 mil stem, and I put on a 120. The bar has got a deep drop. That stands out. We're seeing, for the most part, gravel bars, regardless of how crazy flared out they are, having a pretty shallow drop, which is, it's hard to know what's, just your adaptation versus what's something better or worse. For me, it's a little bit of a unnecessarily deep drop, but again, it's an alloy bar, so easy enough to swap that out if you don't like it. Up top, I like how it's, a flattened top, spreads the pressure out, so that's, nice and cozy. Physique Argo Terra X5 is a saddle I'm seeing, maybe not across the board, but Physique's got a lot of spec across a lot of brands for gravel bikes, and it's pretty comfortable, relatively squishy, pretty triangular shape, so I think that's part of why we're seeing it spec so often. Is it just a matter of scooting fore or aft to get different sit bone widths to fit. I rode this bike on a few occasions, riding by myself, riding some fast group rides. I used it for an Ultra Exploration 5-day tour that my friend Chris Case and I hosted here in Boulder, the Boulder Backroads Ultra Exploration ride. That is a super climby event. Not a race, just we're touring people around, showing people our home roads and trails here. Some pretty steep climbs, north of 10, even 15% in spots, and then some chunkier descents. And I found the bike to be very comfortable, not slow handling or sluggish, but wasn't skittish. It was just a good, solid, middle of the road gravel bike. And I think that's kind of how the thing was built. This is just my speculation, but I'm just guessing that the folks who put the Riverside GCR together, as far as geo spec, surveyed the landscape of gravel bikes in 2023 and went with something just straight up the middle, and it rides in that fashion. Feels calm and balanced, accelerates well. The wheels are nice depth. For gravel, we've got some aero benefit, but they're not so deep you're getting blown around, and they're not so deep that they're heavy and full of inertia that's hard to accelerate. So nothing extreme in any direction. One weird thing was that the left shifter, when out on the road, only shifts about 20% of the time. In the stand, every time you press it, you can feel and hear the click at the lever, and you can see the light on the derailleur light up, and it shifts every single time in the stand. Get out on the road, get out on the dirt roads, and you have to hit the shifter a number of times. So I think there's something, just the connection is not entirely secure in the lever. Check the battery, swap the battery, make sure it was not a battery issue at the lever. Sometimes that's an issue. Checked also with the app, so that's fine. And again, in the stand, shifts totally fine. Right shifter shifts perfectly. And then when you press the button on the derailleur, you can do that when you're working with a bike on the stand. Press it once, that's the same as pressing the right lever. Press it twice quickly, that's the same as pressing the left lever. So the derailleur works fine. It's just there's something blinky about the shifter, which brings up a question or an issue, perhaps, with consumer direct bikes, which is when you buy something from the internet and it doesn't work, what do you do? In this instance, I emailed the PR firm who had been getting me this bike, said, hey, here's the deal. What would Decathlon do for a consumer who bought the bike? They're like, well, let me ask. Came back and said, well, Decathlon says they can't really troubleshoot that over the phone, so you'd have to take that to the bike shop, and maybe user error. Yeah, granted, I can screw up a lot of things, but I'm pretty confident in my ability to press a button. In any event, and I also asked SRAM what they would do, and they would ultimately replace it. But it would be, if you were to have something like this happen, it wouldn't be just as simple as going back to the bike shop if you had bought the bike from the bike shop. So that, just not to belabor the point, but if you're gonna spend $6 grand on a bike, if you can get the exact same bike at a bike shop where you can, one, get your fit dialed when you buy the thing, you can perhaps test ride the thing before you buy it, and then you can have that after the sale service. Again, I'm just kind of stumped why you would pay that same price for something that you would get consumer direct, where the whole point, in my mind, of a consumer direct bike is you've got a lower cost. Now, just to be clear, I've ridden dozens of bikes with SRAM Axis groups, from Red to Force to Rival to Axis. Almost all the time they work just fine. I've had a couple issues with batteries, with like lemon batteries over the years. Had some folks who have the little tab at the bottom wear out so that it doesn't shift when you're riding on a rough surface. Like Dries in Belgium had that issue, would shift fine on pavement. When getting on cobbles, it wouldn't shift because the connection at the battery was not perfect. But this was the first time I had this left shifter go blinky. This, things happen. SRAM takes care of its customers both, on the brand side and at the consumer side. So I'm not worried about that at all. But I just bring that up because, one, that's what happened. That was my experience. This is what I do here. I test bikes and I just tell you what happens. And two, just to underscore the fact that as a consumer direct brand, you've got a different situation than you would if you got a bike from a bike shop. Okay, let's look at some more price comparisons. I've got my notes here. So granted, this bike is cheaper than like a Specialized Crux Pro with SRAM Force. Specialized is known for many things. Being cheap is not one of them. That bike is $8,200. Yeah, it comes in 6 sizes. Yes, it's much lighter than this, but that's a pretty big jump. Trek Checkpoint SL7 Axis, $59.99. Same exact price as this, and that's with SRAM Force, carbon wheels, internal storage, and Trek's ISO speed, which is the built-in compliance there at the back end. That Trek Checkpoint SL7 in a size 56 is just a scooch heavier, 8.9 kilos or 19.63 pounds. For my money, I'd go with the Trek. Not that the ride quality is night and day different. It's a little bit more comfy, but just again, it's the same price, but you've got that shop experience. Not that shops are all perfect. I get it. You can have a bad experience in a shop, but being able to go in, test the thing, get fitted for the thing, and bring it back to the pros who built the bike, that is worth something. And if you're paying the same exact price, why not get that experience also? So that is my take on the Decathlon Riverside GCR. It is a perfectly good gravel bike, but either it needs a much better story or a much better price to compete with other gravel bikes at that SRAM Force level. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And whether you are the type of person who rides in generic Costco flannel or Super Gucci, ASOS high-end kit, get out there and enjoy the ride.